Woodbridge Radio, Common Sense Conversations.
Hello, and welcome to Common Sense Conversations. I'm your host, James Woodbridge. Tonight we have a returning guest. Dr. Ronald Kapp is an emergency room physician with more than 35 years' experience. He's a Guinness Book of World Records holder, and he's written over 5 books on medicine, how to get into medical school, and how to train your mind for peak performance and improvement. More recently, Dr. Kapp has been working on anti-aging and life extension medicine, and he has come up with a new program called BluZoning, which is aimed at reversing aging. More on this subject with Dr. Ronald Kapp. Hi, Dr. Kapp, and welcome to the show.
Well, Stefan, it's great to be back and continue our conversation.
So you've been a very busy person these last couple of years. You've written a number of books. You're doing consulting. You work as an emergency room physician. And now you're into something completely new again, something called BluZoning medicine. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and how you came up with this idea?
Sure. It's my second career. I've been a doctor for nearly 35 years, have done emergency medicine. What I found is that our 20th century medicine was great. It was revolutionary. It used great technology. But it was really just a game of trying to figure out, what is it? In other words, what is the one disease that the patient has? And then once you figure that out, you have to figure out what is the one treatment, something like a drug or surgery, that you now need to treat that one disease. Well, being an emergency room doctor, I liked that model system. It was fantastic. It was fast. It was easy. It was efficient. However, it was often guesswork. I would often be sitting at my desk thinking about the probabilities of what the disease might be, what my treatment might entail. I think we all know that the human body is truly the most complex machine ever built. We are really complex organisms. So in my second career that I'm in now, I started reading about anti-aging medicine. A lot of people call this functional medicine, but basically it's where everything is connected to everything else in the body. It's all intercommunicating with hormones, neurotransmissions. And I learned that the medicine of the 21st century has been evolving greatly from what I had been doing in the emergency room all those years. So now, in the 21st century, it's all about asking why some person has some disease. It's become a question of why, and it's no longer the question of what. And that's a real paradigm shift. And what we're starting to do is close that complexity gap of why the human body does what it does. And this concept that I just outlined is truly the basis for 21st century medicine.
So where do you go from this? Don't you still have to understand the pathology that every patient has, what kind of disease they're suffering from?
Oh, certainly. Pathophysiology is critical to understanding BluZoning medicine and understanding the new paradigm. But think of it this way. Imagine you just had a heart attack. Now, as a doctor, I know what the disease is. You have coronary artery disease. This is not rocket science. You have a bad heart. So I give you some medicines. Maybe you need surgery, balloon angioplasty, maybe some bypass surgery. And then I'm done with you. The cardiologist is done with you. Basically, it's case closed. We send you on your way. Wish you the best of luck. Does that really help you that much?
Well, I suppose it saves your life, but does that prevent further heart attacks?
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. See, it doesn't really help you that much. So the real question now is, in the 21st century, why did you get heart disease in the first place?
Right.
We can diagnose it, we can treat it, but why did you get it in the first place? So we're looking at the root causes of your heart disease. And what we find is that there are many factors, because all disease, no matter what it is multifactorial. Something has gone wrong in many systems, not just one thing. The same concept is valid for diabetes, it's valid for cancer, dementia like Alzheimer's disease. Basically, all the chronic diseases of aging are multifactorial. And that's what's exciting to me, because it's opened up my life from the simple one-dimensional, what do you have, to the multidimensional, why do you have what you have? That's what's exciting to Ron Kapp.
What is this BluZoning? Did you mention that before?
Yeah, BluZoning is, I started reading and found these cultural villages around the world where people live longer. They live without heart disease, without cancer, without dementia. They don't have Alzheimer's, but they're living to the age of 100, 110, 115 without these chronic diseases of aging. So the scientists who have studied this named them blue zones. And they named that because when they originally did the studies, they had a map of the different areas. Some are in Italy, some are in Greece, some are in Costa Rica, some are in Japan. And they outlined on the map where these different long-lived villages were with blue ink. So they were sitting there, most likely after a few beers or something, and they said, these are blue zones. And they got that name, that moniker, and it's held very well. If you do a Google search, you'll quickly see that blue zones are very popular in the lay press right now on Google. There are many books about this, but there's also a lot of science that backs this up. And what excited me was we've scientifically documented that these people are living longer and healthier for specific reasons. Their life is totally different than ours. And I say, if they can do it, why can't we do it? And that's exciting to Ron Kapp. Again, I find it fascinating that they have that, and we don't in this country that much. We have maybe a few pockets. Loma Linda is considered a blue zone in California. But again, that's a special type of Seventh-day Adventist culture, but still qualifies because they live a healthier life. So it can be done in America. It's not something that's just done overseas in foreign cultures.
So it's not something that's inherent in the soil or the air that these people breathe?
As far as we can tell, no. We've studied the genetics of all these different people. Take Sardinia, for example. The culture there originally came from the Iberian Peninsula thousands of years ago, and they're relatively isolated. But there has been some influx of other cultures, but their genetics is relatively homogeneous compared to something like here in America. In fact, I just had my genetics done by 23andMe company up in San Francisco, and it's fascinating the report I received regarding what my personal genetics are. But in the blue zones, we've done the same thing. What are their genetic endowments? So we don't think it's their genes. It's very similar to other cultures in Iberia, other European cultures, Eastern European cultures. And yet the people in Sardinia, as an example, have a different longevity pattern. They have less chronic diseases of aging. So it's really exciting that they have that. And we have quite a bit of information now that it's their lifestyle that is really controlling what's happening to these people.
So it's not what they eat or what medicines they take or their not everybody in their family has a genetic predisposition to live to be 110?
No, they don't. It is lifestyle driven, but what's most interesting when you compare the cultures of Sardinia to Costa Rica to Greece to Japan, even Loma Linda, the diets are somewhat varied. They all eat a healthy diet of wholesome organic foods. They all have a very close-knit family relationships and close friends that give them comfort. They all work hard. They have very low stress levels, at very low stress levels. They're not worried about the politics and the economics like we do here in this country. But it's more their lifestyle. So that is the impetus that got me interested in the blue zones, to say, they can do it. Why can't I do it? Why can't Americans do this? Why can't other people do this and follow what they're doing? That's what's really exciting.
And while you were researching the science behind this concept, what did you find out?
When I went into the medical literature, I was truly blown away with what I found. There is so much science in the anti-aging, in the anti-Alzheimer literature, in the anti-cancer, anti-heart disease literature, that it's incredible. Take, for example, the anti-aging literature. We know the genetic endowment that can extend the life of simple organisms. They started with worms, yeast, fruit flies, and they moved up to rats and mice. Scientifically, in labs around the world, reproducible scientific experiments, and they can extend the lifespan of simple organisms, not just 1 or 2-fold, but 10-fold, 15-fold from normal. Now that's fascinating to me, to say we understand scientifically what the reasons are of why these organisms are not living as long. Then they continued that and extrapolated it to humans, because that's what you and I are really interested in. What is it that you and I can do to live long? I don't want to move to Sardinia. I've been there. I don't want to move to Greece. It's a wonderful country, but I feel like I want to live here in America, but I would like to live a long time. So by extrapolating it to humans, we now know that there are ways for us to live longer also. The very first experiments were done in the 30s with calorie restriction, where we can live 30% longer by restricting our calories. Well, I don't want to really restrict how much I eat. I don't want to go and become real thin, because, in fact, it's been shown scientifically if you're too thin, that shortens your lifespan. But if we can look at other factors that can control my disease processes, and one of the most famous that I've been more recently studying is what's called the Bredesen protocol. Dr. Dale Bredesen is a researcher at UCLA. He's been studying anti-aging medicine for 30 years. He's published in scientific journals. He's written a book about this. And imagine and think about, you have a roof that has 36 holes in it. If you patch just one hole in that roof, it's not going to do much good. You have to patch all 36 holes. Well, that's exactly what Dr. Bredesen did with his program from UCLA, which is a metric-driven protocol, to say, here are the different parameters that affect human health, wellness, and longevity. Such things as vitamin D, homocysteine, your insulin sensitivity. It goes on and on. The things that we talk about in the BluZoning program that are scientifically proven to be healthful and create wellness in human beings.
Well, that sounds very scientific to me, maybe too scientific. What can we do as people, as everyday people living here in America, with all the stress and the pollution that we face, what can we do to improve our lives and live longer?
That's exactly the question I asked myself. What can I do to live longer? What kind of program do I need to be on? So what Dr. Bredesen has done, and what other people have done, is we now have the ability to coach people to change their lives, to implement different modalities so that they don't have these disease processes developing. Take, for example, Alzheimer's disease. By the time you recognize that you have Alzheimer's disease, it's too late. You've already had the disease for probably 20, 30 years developing in your brain. Heart disease is the same way. You don't just automatically have a heart attack. They did autopsies on the soldiers in Vietnam. They found that there were coronary artery disease in 18-year-old soldiers. And that's been replicated over and over.
Yeah.
So stuff has been developing and impacting our body for a very long time. Diabetes, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, same thing. It's not a disease that occurs overnight. It's not like the flu or pneumonia, those acute diseases that I see in the emergency room. These are the chronic diseases that last a long time, that go on and on and on for years and years and years. So what you want to do is you want to start before symptomatology develops. Now, the first person that really did some of this was Dean Ornish. More than 20 years ago, he took heart disease, and he was the first person to show that we can reverse coronary artery blockage through lifestyle modifications. He put people on special diets, did exercise, did meditation. When he published this, it was revolutionary, and that was 20 years ago. Now Dr. Bredesen has come and said we can do the same thing with dementias and Alzheimer's disease type neurodegenerative diseases through lifestyle modification. Now, it takes effort. It's not easy. It's not something that takes, it's not a silver bullet. For example, when you have pneumonia, strep throat, bacterial infection, we treat you with an antibiotic. That's a silver bullet. You get better. These chronic diseases have happened and developed for such a long time that it takes a long time, meaning months to years, to reverse some of these processes. Now, you do see sometimes very quick results where a patient will have tremendous improvement in 1 month. They may have very low vitamin D level, bring their vitamin D level up, and that helps tremendously. But remember, I said all disease is multifactorial, and being multifactorial, that is just one component of many that may have to be addressed in order to reverse some of the neurodegenerative diseases to get to a state of health that we see in the blue zone cultures of Sardinia, Greece, Japan, Costa Rica, and do that over here. So it's truly lifestyle modification. Such things as what do you eat? That's critical. When you eat is critical. We've shown that, and it's been shown over and over, that intermittent fasting for 12, 14 hours is a tremendous tool for health and longevity. It changes not just your weight, but it changes your insulin sensitivity, your insulin resistance. It changes all your metabolic parameters. Sleep is critical. We know that the brain is cleaning itself, regenerating itself while we sleep. So if you're not getting your 7 or 8 hours of solid sleep every night, your brain's not resolving some of the processes that have built up over time. I've been reading about Alzheimer's disease lately. We know that amyloid, which is the protein that builds up in your brain, causes these neurofibrillary tangles and plaques, we think is a very bad thing. But it turns out that we have also proven that amyloid is not always a bad thing. It's protective in some cases. There are some cultures that need amyloid in their brain. It's the brain's response to some type of insult. Maybe it was an inflammatory insult. Maybe it was a toxic insult. Maybe it was an insult from some type of infection. And the brain says, I need to put amyloid down to protect my neurons in my brain. However, living here where we do, amyloid turns out to be a bad thing because we need neurogenesis. We need our neurons to be healthy and functioning in our brain. So to change that, it's all lifestyle driven with the diet, with the sleep, with the exercise. Sometimes there are supplements. But the first thing you have to do is an analysis of what the heck is going on with your patient today. Where are you today so that we can monitor and measure where you will be tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after. So it's metric driven, in other words. It's multifactorial. It's many factors. Recall those 36 holes. We have at least 36 different parameters that affect our chronic diseases of aging. And if we can fix those 36 factors, there may be more as science continues to study this. This is an area of tremendous active research going on. There may turn out to be 50, 75 different parameters we have to eventually measure. You have to measure your genetics. You have to measure your microbiome in your stool, which is easy to do. Companies that do this. There are a lot of things we can do here in America so that we can take science and meld it with the people and how they live in those blue zones. And that's what BluZoning is all about, combining our science with their cultural attributes that we know cause them to have a long life. And that's what the BluZoning program really does. My vision is to empower everyone to live a life without the chronic diseases of aging for as long as possible.
So, based on your extensive research into anti-aging, you have come up with a program called the BluZoning program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I do this through the BluZoning program through a very metric-driven program. In other words, I measure where you are today. How healthy are you today? Maybe how sick are you today? But basically, how healthy are you today? I then follow in real time your progress on the program. I don't just fix one small part of your physiology. It's a global health enhancement. And it's based on all your interrelated systems in your body, your genetics, your personal genome, your microbiome in your gut, and is driven by the measured levels of your current health, your hormone status, your how much inflammation is in your body, and your habits that you have now. So what's really involved is the very first thing I ask someone is, why do you want to be well and healthy? What's your why reason? And that's a hard answer to come up with for many people. Why do you want to live a long, healthy life? So I have them write it down, think about it, write it down. That's step one. You have to think about it, write it down. But then I have to analyze and determine how passionate are they. Because this is not, like I said earlier, a magic bullet. It's how passionate are you to want to do this? How big is your why? How serious are you? And then if people are really serious, they realize that this is not a magic bullet. It's valid science that has a dramatic effect on your physiology. It will help you treat and hopefully prevent those chronic diseases of aging and live longer. Then they come in for their first real doctor visit with me. And what I do is I take a detailed intake form at that time and say, okay, what is your general medical health, your history, your background? And what are the different factors that may be impacting you that would impact your future health, your longevity? What could impact your future probability of chronic disease? What's going to impact your future probability of developing Alzheimer's disease or any other neurodegenerative dementia? And once that is done, I examine such things as, what's your past toxic exposure? What are your current hormonal contributors to how you're living today? Have you had any, for example, any head injuries in the past? Have you had diabetes? Are you type 2 diabetic, type 1 diabetic? Do you have different sleep problems? Do you have sleep apnea? 90% of people that have sleep apnea don't even know it until they go into a sleep lab. And then I look at any nutritional deficiencies. That is done on your very first visit when I see a patient. Then we take, and if there's time, because some people get tired just doing that part, they have to come back a second visit. Sometimes they do it on the first visit. We do a cognoscopy. You're sitting there thinking, what's a cognoscopy? Never heard of that. You've had your colonoscopy. I know that. To have your colon looked at. Why don't you have your cognoscopy, Stefan, to look at your brain? What is your current cognition? This was a term that was developed by Dr. Bredesen, in fact. It's not my invention. But you can do a cognitive screening exam. And there are many different types. In fact, one of them is from Toronto, where you are well acquainted with. Some of them are computer-driven. Some of them are paper-driven. In fact, I can do a brief cognitive assessment in a matter of 3 minutes. And it's standardized. It's validated. It's very simple. And it gives me an indication of what your current mental status is. You want to go on the internet and do a general cognitive assessment that is a little more detailed, takes about an hour. It's computer driven, but you get a very nice long report, and that is also scientifically validated to give you some ideas of where you are in your own mental physiology. But mental is only part of it. I order a battery of blood tests and labs to determine your blood sugar levels, your insulin status, your ApoE4 status, your hormone status, homocysteine, vitamin D, vitamin B6, B12, all these different parameters. It's a question of how much money you want to spend, and I try and focus it a little bit on what labs do you really need based on that initial history taking that we did.
Right.
Then I have to sit down and review what and who you are. What type of person are you? Where are you? And what do you want to accomplish here? Based on your history, based on your current status, both physical, mental, emotional, and where do you want to go in the future? Then I create a program based on the BluZoning concept from the longevity cultures around the world of what you need to do now, what I recommend you need to do. The more different tools we can implement in your daily life with your habits that can be changed. For example, maybe you're drinking 3 beers a day. I'm sorry, that's too much beer. Patients say, well, I like beer. Well, how long do you want to live? Oh, well, maybe living is more important than drinking beer. I'm not saying you can't have a little alcohol, because there is some benefit. In fact, the resveratrol in French red wine activates your SIRT1 factors and extends longevity. It's a very healthy drink in very small quantities. It's not very well absorbed. Resveratrol can be absorbed better through supplements. But I create a unique, personalized plan that you need to follow. That overwhelms most patients. So they leave, they think about it, they start to implement some of the things, but they have to come back in a month and say, how are you doing? Let's see how you've done in this program.
Right.
Are you BluZoning it or are you not BluZoning it? Do you feel better? Some people feel tremendously better. They're totally inspired. They're motivated. They're gangbusting, excited. Other people say, well, I haven't really noticed much, I'm not sure. Let's see why not. How conscientious were you? What did you do? Well, I slipped a few times. I ate a few Twinkies. I had a couple M&Ms at the party. And that completely upsets your insulin sensitivity parameters there. So you've backstepped, and that hurts some people. And we know that happens. We're all human. We all slide back.
Sure.
And what we want to then implement is a health coach. Now, I do that for some patients, but there are regular health coaches that know these protocols and do BluZoning coaching to get out there and say, okay, let's see why you're backsliding. When you go to a party, maybe you have to plan on what you're going to be doing there and not drinking the alcohol, not eating these fried foods that they're serving. You may look like, I want to eat them, but if you think about your initial, why do you want to have a healthy life? Why do you want to live without the chronic diseases of aging? Do you want to have type 2 diabetes when you're 50 years old? I don't think so. Do you want to have heart disease when you're 60? Do you want to have Alzheimer's when you're 70? We have 7 million Alzheimer's patients in America today. That's predicted to go to 75 million in the next 25 years, tenfold increase. Because, as I said earlier, these chronic diseases are building up for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And we're just at the tip of the iceberg. It's a true silver tsunami headed our way of disease. And unless we start doing something now, unless you take action today, start thinking about this today. Call me today to say, hey, Dr. Kapp, maybe I want to learn more about the BluZoning program a little bit here. I don't want to have those diseases. If you're telling me I can lower my risk factor for heart disease, for dementia, for neurodegenerative diseases, yes, I guess yes. And are you telling me I can live longer? Yes, yes, yes. Well, then I want to hear more about this. That's what the BluZoning program is all about. It's metrics-driven, multifactorial that combines the scientific knowledge with the empirical, everyday, validly proven knowledge of the people who live in the blue zones of Italy, Greece, Japan, and Costa Rica. So that's what I'm about now.
And for those listeners out there that are interested in this program, how can they get a hold of you?
I have a website, BluZoning.com. Very simple. And on that website, they can contact me. It's very easy to do, and they can schedule a visit, a consultation through the internet. I'm developing a telehealth platform so that we can do personal one-on-one communications. I'm also available for talks to go to your location if you have a group that needs a presentation on BluZoning and some of these concepts on how to live longer and have an anti-aging, anti-dementia program in your community. I'm available for that too.
Awesome. I'm pretty sure most of our listeners are interested in living longer and healthier. Who wouldn't be? And with the latest research that you provide and the consultations and the guidance, I think this is a very viable option. And also, you seem to be taking a very holistic approach, and that's very popular these days, looking at the whole person and not just treating the symptoms. And I think most people nowadays understand that it's necessary to treat the entire organism rather than just prescribe a pill for a symptom. Rather heal the entire body, heal the entire person, and from what I gather, that's what you're doing. So it sounds like very exciting work that you're doing, very needed now because the healthcare costs. Who can afford to be sick? Nobody can afford to be sick these days. So
you're correct. This is a solution for individual people, for families. It's a national solution because our healthcare system is broken. It's very expensive. We know the costs that are coming down the road in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And this is something that can truly impact and save Medicare, this is a situation of national security interest, in my opinion. I'm totally inspired, totally motivated to say this is something you have to do for yourself, you have to do it for your family, and you have to do it for our civilization to, keep going. It's always cheaper to prevent disease than treat disease. The cost of a heart attack is hundreds of thousands of dollars. Cancer treatment, total cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Nursing home costs for an Alzheimer's patient, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, depending on the level of care that they need. And you can have these chronic diseases for 10, 20 years. It will bankrupt you. You save up all your money, you work your entire life, and you get a chronic disease of aging, and it's gone in I'm just going to say a heartbeat, but more than one. It's gone in a flash.
So it sounds like a very good program, Dr. Ron. I'm very glad that you came on the program again, and I want to thank you for coming on and sharing with our listeners some really positive and encouraging advice.
Well, thank you, sir. And if they want to contact me, it's BluZoning.com.
Okay, and that's BluZoning.
Very good. Best of health. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Ron. Bye.
Woodbridge Radio, Common Sense Conversations.